Hello, ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond. My name is Hill, and welcome to Table Tested. Basically, the new name for the series where I look at kind of indie games or smaller games that I've been given access to through Press Engine or any other review websites, though it's pretty much Press Engine at this point. So today, I will be taking a look at Diplomacy is Not an Option. Specifically, the base game, the map editor that has been recently released, as well as Diplomacy is Not an Option, Shareware, or Shareware as I will be referring to it, which did just release a couple days ago. So, Diplomacy is Not an Option, I don't know how I can shorten that, was developed and published by Door 407, was originally released in early access on February 10th, 2022, and then full release came out on October 5th, 2024. Now you might be thinking, okay, it is now May of 2025, almost a full year later, why are you covering this game? Well, one, got a copy of the game through Press Engine, so thank you to Press Engine and to Door 407, appreciate it. Two, as I mentioned in that long, kind of rambly intro, the game has not only a map editor been released, but also a brand new game. Technically, it is separate software and is available on Steam completely for free, hence the name Shareware. Now, for those of you who are, dear God, too young to know what Shareware means, it was basically a form of a demo or like a slice of a game that you could share with your friends or that you could access for free in most cases through some means, whether that was going to a website or mailing in something from like a cereal box or some sort of kind of sweepstakes. It was a way to distribute software, hopefully, not illegally, hopefully not maliciously, for free to people so they could try your game with minimal kind of resistance and minimal obstacles in the way. Anyway, what is Diplomacy is Not an Option? I'm just going to call it Diplomacy at this point. What is it? Basically, it is a survival RTS that is really, really hard. Now, I am not one to play many survival RTSs. I did play the Empire series back in the day. Age of Empires, sorry. So I do have some experience with this, and even the devs in their tutorials say this is not an easy game. This is a difficult game, and I have to agree. Surprisingly, for a survival RTS, it is very pared down. Like, it's very focused, very simplistic in comparison to some others, because you're not dealing with a lot of vehicles or in terms of like diverse siege equipment. You are very much dealing with a limited number of resources, limited number of options to deal with massive waves. I am talking thousands of enemies on screen at once, potentially. For example, the 6 resources you deal with are stone, wood, people, because people need to run, the stores need to gather resources, but also need to serve in your military. Food, iron, and mana. Now, mana is used specifically for spells, so think, Total War Warhammer and that franchise, in the sense that you could use spells in addition to your armies to either eliminate enemies, debuff them, or potentially buff your own allies. Now, you're like thinking, okay, 6 resources, that's not so much, and you're right, it's not, but also there are limited options in terms of the kind of equipment you can build in, like siege equipment, particularly the number of foot soldiers, or rather the variety of foot soldiers, and just the way that it kind of all plays out, given the number of enemies you have to face and the map sizes. So, this is kind of a weird one in the sense that you are collecting resources from around the map, again, stone, wood, food, but it's always very simple, very easy, right? Stone comes from trees, wood comes from trees, stone comes from rocks. Food can be collected either from berry bushes or usually from fishing huts. And all that's well and dandy, all that's great. It took me about an hour to do a single level because you get waves at every specific night, and those nights will come at certain time intervals. You can speed up the game, but because I am just not the most focused, not the best manager, as you will see with the gameplay, I was usually playing at 1.0 speed. So it took me quite a while to get through that first mission, and it was hard. My walls were about to break, my archers were dying, my knights were being, overwhelmed. It was getting crazy. And as I say, that was the first mission of many where you can either choose to side with the king and the royals, do what you're told as the noble, or as the peasants who are currently committing the uprising against you and the king. Now, according to How Long to Beat and a couple of, social media posts and other things that I looked at for the game, an average campaign length can be anywhere between 50 and 70 hours. That is 50 to 70. That is an insane length of time for what is effectively a single run of the campaign and doesn't have you dealing with all the story beats from the other side. And you get all of that for about 38.99 Canadian, so I'm guessing like 35, maybe even less than that US. At the time of this recording, it is on sale for 55% off on Steam. I will link that description down below. I will link Shareware as well, because again, it is a separate game. But before we get into, actually, you know what? No, let's talk about Shareware right now. So Shareware is a much more condensed version of the game. Now, it is a 2-year newer version, meaning it came out 2 years after. It came out this year, on April 30th of 2025. Now, it is, as I said, a much more condensed down version. It is only 2 missions that I did not complete. I completed the first I almost completed the first mission, but it, in its tutorial, even said, okay, this is a hard game. You will get frustrated. Understand that you may need to walk away and come back to it, which I think is a good warning, because if you are not familiar with this type of game, if you're not familiar with just how an RTS of this style operates, you can get really overwhelmed really quickly. You start out with, a couple knights, a couple archers, and Duncan Ironbrow. Now, the idea is you play as this kind of knight captain who is starting to kind of quell the peasant rebellions as kind of a prequel to the main story of Diplomacy is Not an Option, in an interesting kind of twist. Now, what I noticed with this mission is you have to keep Duncan alive. He is not allowed to die, or else you fail the mission. So what I ended up doing is I took him, the other knights, the archers, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2 catapults, or that could have been a different mission, around the map, because around the map you will find rebel campsites. Now, the idea is you destroy these campsites and reduce the number of people in the final wave, because for every rebel campsite you didn't destroy, there will be more enemies in that final wave. And the game does tell you this, like, hey, go around, destroy the rebel campsites, collect the resources, because if you don't, there's going to be even more people to fight in that final wave, and you could potentially get overwhelmed very quickly. So that's what I did. I took him around with bodyguards, of course, because I wanted to make sure he was safe. I got through most of the waves, which was really nice. I did appreciate that. It was also interesting, too, because it places you along a shoreline, meaning you only have to worry about 3 sides, because as far as I can tell, I have not experienced this, I have not seen it in trailers, I do not believe the enemies can come from the water on boat or any sort of watercraft. I could be wrong about that, but again, it's not something that I had seen in the trailers or personally experienced. Anyway, as I said, Duncan was doing great. I was getting a bunch of archers, putting them on the walls, putting them on the castle. All was good, all was well, until the final wave came. It was attacking from 2 sides at the same time, so I was like, okay, I will send Duncan and my knights to one side, send some of my additional archers to the other side, and then kind of, move them back and forth. Problem was, with the way I was clicking, Duncan got brought into kind of the center of that skirmish, and I could click on his character icon to, like, command him individually, move him around. I tried to get him out of there. I did. But because of either how deep in he was, getting surrounded, or potentially a problem with the pathing, that the AI just couldn't get around the corner of a wall, which was a little frustrating. Again, I can't say for sure. He did die. And that sucked. It was unfortunate. I was not happy about that, in the sense that this was literally the last part of the mission. I was like, oh, that's frustrating, but you know what, it happens. That's okay. So I think for what you're given here, you can get a good 3 hours or so out of Shareware specifically. And I may not have mentioned this. No, I didn't. It's free. It's completely free, and I think it is the best way to experience a game. I know I've been covering a lot of kind of either games or demos recently, especially in the month of May, but part of the reason I cover demos especially is because they're a great way to experience a game absolutely for free without investing any money, and you can see, okay, is this something I want to support? Is this something I can see going somewhere? Is this something I think I'll enjoy? Now, I do think it's a little odd that, they make Diplomacy Not an Option, and then 2 years later, admittedly, they worked hard on this. There are definitely better quality of life improvements in terms of the UI, in terms of how the game feels, compared to the base game. But to come out 2 years later with a prequel that is also a demo that you are calling Shareware, for those of you who will remember that term, is kind of wild. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing by any means. It's great to have that experience, to understand, am I going to like this, or am I just going to get so frustrated that I'll want to put my fist through a monitor? Never been that frustrated. You got to learn to walk away. But having that option is awesome. Now, the other big change that was released around that same time, with diplomacy is not an option, base game. I want to make that very clear. This is with the base game, not with Shareware, so if you want to experience this part, you do have to purchase the base game. That is the map editor. So I will put footage on screen of this. I played 3 separate maps, one in Chinese that was called Stonebreak Fortress. I did also have some, I believe, Chinese characters. I then also played a Russian map that I believe said berries are awesome. And finally, I played another map called Grimridge. Now, what I love about the map editor, what I love about these 3 maps in particular, is that they all felt so different. The Stonebreak Fortress was this massive, sprawling, epic construction of towers, of resources, of barracks. And the idea was you had massive amounts of knights, cavalry, siege equipment, and you were supposed to take these out and, fight off massive numbers of enemies. Now, me being inexperienced, at least recently, and very much not good at tactical army combat with large unit scales, got a lot of my units killed when we went up against towers with catapults and other siege equipment that was specifically designed to counter you. And then I wasn't pulling my cavalry back in time anyway. It was this huge, epic scale battle, which I think is great because it capitalizes on the number of enemies that you can have on screen at one time, and I think was a great showcase of how crazy some of these battles get, or how much, the scale can grow and how massive they can be. The Russian one, the berry one, was depressing, I guess, disappointing almost. Not in the sense it was a bad map per se, but it was, I couldn't quite figure out the gimmick. Like, yes, there were berries, bushes everywhere, and there was no fishing, because fishing is very much the way to go in terms of food production, but that was it. You got some basic knight units, some archers, and then you were just kind of in the middle of a field, and I was kind of confused as to what they were going for with it. And then finally we come to Grimridge, or Grimbridge, I can't remember one of the two. That was basically just a standard map. It was kind of, I don't want to say uninspired, but it definitely wasn't doing as much creatively speaking as the first two. I then played around with the map editor myself. I was kind of confused. I could see how I could change the terrain of the map, add in forests, add in mountains, lower or raise terrain to kind of, encourage those sorts of things. I could see where I could put in ponds or berry bushes. I could not, though, figure out how to make buildings. This is the one thing that confused me, and the one thing that kind of frustrated me with this is I wanted to look at all the building options and see what I could make, and maybe if I had saved it, there was a next step that I just didn't quite get to, I'm not sure, but to be able to see all the building options would have been really cool, because it could help me figure out, okay, what challenge would I want to make for other people? What challenge would I want to make for myself even? And then I also looked at all the different units. There is a huge number of units from a huge number of different factions. You have, the rebels, you have the king's army, you have the undead, you have kind of almost like monsters, and then they go like black magic creatures. There was just a huge variety that I didn't get to experience, that I know you do experience through the story of the base game, but obviously I didn't get that far in. I did play about 3 hours total among the base game, the map editor, and Shareware. What was really interesting to me is I was able to look at the enemy units because I could decide on, okay, how many waves were there going to be? How populated are those waves going to be with certain enemies from what faction, what variety? I could just customize with like, okay, I want a few, I want a lot, I want average, I want many, I want very many, or I could hand pick like, okay, I want 300 of these guys, I want 200 of these guys, I have 20 of these. Like, you can just throw in massive amounts of the best unit or the strongest units, or just thousands and thousands of units of chaff. Like, it's really up to you and how you want these waves to go. Additionally, you can restrict buildings for the player. Like, on this map, you can say, okay, the player can't build this, they can't build this, they can't build this. And I think it's a great avenue for creativity and for challenges. I am not someone who personally enjoys participating in a challenge run. I like to experience the game for what it has to offer, but I do like watching challenge runs occasionally, and I think for, you know, the streamer or challenge run community, this is phenomenal. This is a great change because it not only allows people to experience these challenges, but also make them themselves. Maybe you have some crazy idea for how to get around, you know, a 10,000 army wave with just, I don't know, one building. I'm sure that's not physically possible, but you get the idea, right? You can go down and explore ideas that you're not able to with many other games. And I love it when games give you the ability to play with their tool set, to play with their mechanics, and create something that still works within the game without having to mod it, but allows you to create a vision that you saw for the game, that you wanted. Because I'm not someone who's good at modding. I just, that skill set is far beyond me. And I think there's a lot of people out there like me who don't have that skill set, but maybe unlike me, want to create something new, want to create something of their own using the tools that the devs give them or that the devs have used themselves. I think it's always a great option to add in something like a map editor with very robust mechanics, very robust systems that allow them to, especially with something like this, right? Because it's an RTS, because it's very, I don't want to say simple, but it's very pared down to just collect the 6 resources, fight off the enemies. That's all you have to do. You don't necessarily need to worry about morale as much. You do still, because if dead bodies pile up or people don't get enough food, but it's so focused that it allows people to make unique and interesting scenarios without having to worry about how it might play out, you know, or clash with the more complex mechanics. I love that. I think that's great. So all in all, I think this is a fantastic release and update for not only the base game, but especially Shareware. Link for both of them is in the description down below. Please do check out Shareware if you are at all interested in RTS. Feel free to also tell me how bad I am at RTS games. I'm very much aware. Well, thank you, ladies, gentlemen, everyone between and beyond, so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope to do more of these table-tested games where I spend more time, go more in depth, and try to better understand the games, because the month of May has been very busy with these, and a lot of it's been, I spend an hour, I record, you know, my voiceover, put it over the footage, and just shoot it out. And it hasn't felt how I wanted it to. It hasn't given the games the time to breathe or the attention I wanted to. I was just really worried about my press engine score, and I think putting out less but better quality videos is definitely the way to go. That rating will go up in time, and I don't want to be the guy who just kind of shoots out a video every day. That's not where I want to be. That's not where I want the channel to be. And I hope you'll stick around for more of these. With all that being said, thanks so much for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.